connecting. Does everyone have their coffee for Coffee and Connection? Does anyone need a few minutes? I can't see everybody. Okay. Well, with my little preface of what today is going to be about, does anybody want to start off with a question or with a comment or something that they'd like us to touch on that I didn't really mention so far? And those are my dogs in the background that you're probably about to see. Sorry. Okay. Well, so I was just going to start. I was going to go around and have people say why they came to today's Coffee and Conversation, whether it's just you like the Coffee and Conversations in general and wanted to join today, or if it was the specific topic. There's only a few of us, so I figured we had time to do that. Rachel, since you're essentially staff, I was going to have you help me out and start.
I'm Rachel Williams. I'm a CASA volunteer for 11 years. I'm also a peer coordinator, and I joined just to get some updates and to find out what's going on.
Okay, great. Was it today's specific topic that you wanted to join, or was it just Coffee and Conversation?
Both. I'm interested in the topic, and I like seeing people too. Just making sure everybody's okay.
Okay, good. Thank you, Rachel.
Oh, hug, Rachel. Virtual hug.
Yeah. So, Jamie, could you tell us a little bit why you picked today to join and why?
I've just found these Coffee and Conversation a little bit, helpful. Good to see the community and who else is volunteering. And then a little bit of like fear of missing out. Like, am I going to miss some like major piece of information if I don't attend? But yeah, just I want to stay as informed as possible.
I like that. FOMO is the reason why. Fear of missing out. I just recently learned that phrase from my sister. I was like, oh my gosh, I have FOMO all the time. And then Jamie, how long have you been with CASA? And you're an advocate, right?
I'm a volunteer. I have 2 cases right now, and I think I've been about 2 years volunteering. I don't know.
Well, I trained you, so that gives some date on it. Yeah, about 2 years, right, Jamie? Yeah.
Okay, great. And then I like the, Rachel started with the lead of telling us how long she's been with CASA and her roles, if everybody could do that moving forward too. I think that's helpful. Who else do I have here? All of our screens probably look a little different. Laura?
Hey, yeah, I've been a CASA for just about a year. And I joined this conversation for the topic. And I always like learning a little bit more all the time about CASA. So I'm eager for knowledge.
Great. And Laura, who's your senior program coordinator?
Matt Kale.
Matt. Who all has Matt? Just you? Okay.
Just me.
Gotcha. Yeah, and a lot of what I've learned, Matt trained me in the senior program coordinator role specifically. So he's such a great resource. We ask each other a lot of questions and bounce ideas off each other. Actually, everyone is. I love our staff so much. Thank you, Laura. And then I can't see the name, but I think that's Bob, right?
It is, yes.
Hi.
Hi there.
Tell us about you and how long you've been with CASA and why you're here.
I've been at CASA about approximately 2 years. And when I went to Rebecca's training, she instilled in us that if we don't do this once in a while, we will feel extremely guilty. So I didn't want to get into that much guilt this week, so I figured I better sign up for it. And frankly, you always pick up something from somebody on one of
I'm
these.
glad it worked, Bob.
It did. And I'm not even Catholic.
Wait, and is Carol Lee your senior program coordinator? Just trying to.
No, Zoe.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's right. So you're in the peer coordinator model. Wonderful. Okay. Tara, is it Tara or Tara?
Tara.
Tara, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm Mara, so I had to ask. Just in
Oh,
case.
no worries. I get all kinds of things. I've only been at CASA for a couple of months, and I'm just here just to get information. And Carolee is my supervisor.
Great. And Carolee's so fantastic too.
Is.
She is on top of everything,
Yes.
which is amazing. And then, was there anything that you wanted to add about why today's Coffee and Conversation specifically with this topic?
No, I have wanted to make every single one that you guys have done and have not been able to, and this is the first one I could actually make.
Okay, great. So, I mean, if we veer off topic too, that's totally fine. I think the point is coffee and conversation, kind of as if we were all in person and hanging out and, you know, having a casual conversation about anything that comes up. So thanks for being here. I'm glad you could make this one.
Thanks.
So Linda.
Yes. I've been at CASA for about 2 years. I've got the same case. She's down in Colorado Springs now, which makes it kind of a hassle to have to drive down there, but it's worth it. She's really a good kid. So I like that. And I signed on to this because I just always want more information.
Yeah, nice. My kid is actually in Colorado Springs right now for the day, so I have to drive down there after this and go see him. I feel your pain, but also the joy that when it comes to advocating for these kids that really need us. So thank you for taking a kid that's far away. You know, that happens sometimes, and it's not.
Well, she wasn't far away when we started.
Yep. Has that been working okay for you, especially?
Oh yeah, I'm retired, so I don't work, so it works fine.
Okay, good. Well, thanks, Linda. And then I think that Mary is on the phone.
I am.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. I've been a CASA since October. I just picked up my second case. Both cases have multiple children, so they really keep me hopping. And so I'm here just to get more info. You know, the COVID thing is a little crazy, but the more information, the better. So that's that.
Thanks, Mary. And are you in the peer coordinator model now?
Zoe is my coordinator, and one of these days I will look to be a peer coordinator myself. But right now I'm I feel like I need more experience before that happens. So
Well, yay, thank you so much for jumping in and just being such a fantastic CASA. I've heard what great work you're doing, and we'd love to have you join our peer coordinator model and as a coordinator. Since I've brought it up so much, is there anybody that doesn't know what the peer coordinator model is or has any questions about that? It seems relevant to program procedures and things like that. If most people that I can see, can you raise your hand if you know what it is?
I think so.
Becca, you better know what it is, right? Wait, so Jamie, you don't know what it is? Or you do? Sorry. Okay. Great. Actually, who also is on here? Is that Chris? Is that Chris Hansen on the call?
Yes, it's me.
Oh, okay, yay. Another senior program coordinator with us. She runs Broomfield, essentially, and she's fantastic and been with us for forever. But Chris, I'll let you introduce yourself.
As Mar said, I work in Broomfield. I've been here over 15 years, so I'm the grandma of the group. And I'm listening just to make sure I have the same information that everybody else does. So thanks for sharing.
Do we have any of Chris's folks on here today? Anybody have Chris as a senior program coordinator? Okay, just checking. So this is great. So I'll have Chris as to be able to talk a little bit too about how she's been directing her advocates during this COVID time and how that's been going. I have not introduced myself, so I'm Mara Buckman. You might also see my name as Mara Wild Buckman. I'm the volunteer and data manager with CASA of Adams and Broomfield. So I work really closely with all the senior program coordinators. I help with things like if you were to come off your case and then take a little break before coming on and taking another case, I would be reaching out to you potentially. You also might hear from me if you need to renew your background check, things like that. I also used to be a senior program coordinator myself, so I am familiar with the role. And like I said before, we're a really tight-knit team that all have different areas of expertise, if you will, and different knowledge and different backgrounds. So anything that I don't know the answer to, I have Chris to help me out with, or any of other staff members that we can reach out to later. Yeah, is there anything you wanted to add, Chris, before we move on about some of the procedures, or anything you wanted to start with?
No, I think this will be a good learning experience for everybody, and kind of just open mic, so to speak, so people can ask questions. I think that'll be great.
Yeah. And some of our coffee and conversations are a little more like we have slides or information to give, especially the one about court hearing and processes. There's a lot more information to give, so it's a little more like a training. And then some of them, like today, are just a little more conversational and just bringing up some random topics in general. I was just going to start with a few things. Does everybody know about our normal transportation policy, and then the fact that our transportation policy is halted right now because of COVID-19? Okay, it seems like everybody knows. Normally, there is a waiver that you can fill out if you need to go pick your kid up and actually put your CASA kid in your vehicle and transport him or her somewhere. There is a form that you can fill out, but what it is it's waiving liability on the part of CASA. So you are taking on all of that liability of putting a ward of the state into your car. So that also means, like, would your insurance cover that? If something were to happen, what's going on? We haven't had any issues in terms of anybody getting in trouble for transporting their kid or getting into an accident, but as you know, that could very easily happen, and you need to be willing to take on that responsibility. So that's what that waiver means. And it's important that you understand what you're signing when you do that. So if you ever have any questions about a waiver that you're signing, talk to your senior program coordinator about it, and we can flesh it out a little more. But those waivers are not being approved of right now during the pandemic because there's no way to socially distance with your kid in a car. You can't be 6 feet apart. It doesn't really work that way. In regular times, though, I will bring up, since that's what we're here to talk about, like what the procedures are in general and the policies in general. If you wanted to transport your kid, and if it was appropriate and you were willing to take on that responsibility and you talk to the team about it, caseworker and guardian ad litem, and everybody thinks it's okay and above board, you might also need to check with foster mom or biological parents, whoever is the caregiver for that child at that time. It might need to be a team discussion, but let's say that's all happened and done. You need to get approval from your senior program coordinator. So you can't fill out a form that day and then send it to them. You would have to plan ahead of time. I would say about a week ahead of time. Sometimes emergencies happen or things come up where you don't have that much time to get it approved, and that's probably okay. You just need to make sure that you hear back from your senior program coordinator and you get a verbal and or written approval prior to moving forward. So just the fact that you signed that waiver and submitted it to your senior program coordinator isn't enough. You need to hear back from them first. And then those things get uploaded. They can be uploaded to Optima, and you would record the fact that you picked up that child and that you entered a transportation waiver in a contact log. Is there anything I missed about transporting policies, Chris and Rachel? I'm getting Rachel shaking her head no. So.
I think you covered it really well.
Okay, good. I need that feedback. I thrive on positive feedback. I'm like, am I doing this well? Am I explaining this right? So thank you. Anybody have questions about that? Or has anybody previously ever transported their kid, and any concerns or issues that they'd like to share with the group about that? Rachel?
Okay, sorry.
I have transported kids before, and the way I deal with the transportation is I will not transport a kid until I know them very well, so that I know that they're not going to jump out of my car or run off. I'm very, very careful and very specific about which kids I transport. And I do have a kiddo right now that I probably will never transport because he's too high of a risk. So that's how I do mine.
And I know that Mary had something to say, but before we go on to that, I just wanted to echo what Rachel said. I have 2 cases right now. In one case, I don't transport. In the other case, I do. So it's a very, very serious thing. I know some CASA programs don't even allow transportation in general, so it's something to think about, but it definitely happens. And if it works for your case and your supervisor approves of it and your team thinks it's a good idea and you're comfortable with it, we don't want to deter you. We just want to impress upon you the severity of the situation and that you really need to think about it. So with that, Mary, I know you had something you wanted to share. Go ahead.
Well, my first case, I really got very comfortable with this family with 3 children, and I forgot one time to fill out the paperwork. Excuse me. And oh my God, who was my SBC at the time? I can't even remember. But I thought I was going to be fired because I just forgot to fill it out. So when you say, fill these things out a week ahead of time, I do try to plan ahead, and I'm almost thankful now that we don't have to worry about it. Isn't that awful? Because I can be forgetful, and I don't mean to be, but I gotta put that like forefront if I need to take them someplace. Anyway, just saying, it's been for me, it's been hard to keep in the forefront of my mind. I think that my new case is going to be a little bit different, so I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, that's that.
Thanks, Mary. That actually was really helpful that you brought that up for so many reasons. But first of all, it's because I think I forgot to mention that you need to fill out a transportation waiver for every single time that you were to transport that child. It's not a blanket waiver. It's not a blanket waiver for all cases that you're on, nor is it a blanket waiver for each case. So it's for every time that you would transport, which is why it's hard to remember sometimes, and slip-ups do happen. And especially on a case where, let's say, every Thursday you pick up your kid and go to the library. It can be really hard to remember to do that every time. And Matt says, our lead senior program coordinator, he says something that I think is really funny. He always says, if you want to incur my wrath, forget your transportation waivers, and that will happen. But that being said, because, again, we're impressing upon you the severity of this and that liability is there. But that being said, Mary is still around, and we still think she is fantastic, and she is an amazing CASA advocate that we want to recruit to be a peer coordinator someday, right? So that doesn't mean that you're going to be fired as a CASA advocate if you were to forget one time, but we don't want that to happen. And we appreciate Mary sharing that. But that's why you have a relationship with your senior program coordinator. You can, if worse came to worse, retroactively fill out that waiver so that you are in the practice of having one for every time and not forgetting, even if it had to be retroactive, which isn't ideal. But talk to your senior program coordinator. And then let's say you forgot and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm picking up my kid in an hour. Even though Mara told me it needed to be a week ahead of time, I know that you all have ways that you communicate with your senior program coordinators that aren't also just email. Call him or her, your supervisor, text them, whatever means of communication that you have with them that's a little bit faster. They're happy to help you out. They want these kids to be, helped and have nice visits and have good relationships with you. So they'll work with you and get these approved. Go ahead, Rachel.
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. So what I have done in the past when I've done that is I have printed transportation waivers, and what I have done is I've written them out, taken a picture, and sent them by email to Matt. when he was my coordinator. So you can do that too, or you can also add a scan thing on your phone, which I've done, which as a peer coordinator, I take notes during court. So I scan it and send it to Paula. So you can do it that way too. And I have had to do last minute emergency runs. So that's how I've done that.
That's helpful. Practical approach to how to make it happen. And I know you can access the transportation waiver on our website under info for advocates. Also, your senior program coordinator can send you a copy. So there's a few ways that you can find it. How does everybody feel about transportation? Share stories, questions. Was that a hand raise, Linda, or?
Yeah, I pushed the wrong button. I transport mine frequently. I have a really good relationship with the foster mom. And I've just, since she's so far away and I only get down there once a month, I talk to her on the phone other times. But before COVID came along, I would take her to lunch and I think I took her to the zoo once and a couple things like that. And it's been fine. And I did forget my waiver one time too, and I did it retroactively. So, yeah.
I think a lot of us have forgotten and have to quickly scramble to say like, hey, please get this signed for me.
Yeah.
So everybody feels that pain. So I think that's a really good segue maybe into another topic. Thanks, Linda, about spending money on our kids and what to do for visits. Is that something that everybody wants to talk about? I know it's a little not irrelevant right now because of COVID, but I know a lot of people are having virtual visits and not in person, so there's less of the opportunity to take your kid out for ice cream and pay for ice cream for her, but it's still relevant, and we're still doing some visits in person. So I think and eventually the world will go back to normal, right? Eventually. So I think we should talk about it. I was going to mention, Linda talked about taking her kid out to eat. I think that's a great way to engage with your CASA kiddo and learn about them and build a relationship, right? And I think that's a good way to spend. I think we say general rule of thumb, you don't want to be spending money on your kid because there's some issues that come along with that, not because we're mean and we don't want kids to have anything fun or nice, but because there's just some general issues that come along with it. But something like taking your kid out to eat every once in a while, or getting them ice cream, or doing something a little nice for them on their birthday, getting them a book that they like, that's all okay. But anything much more than that, I would think about. And I think about it really hard. And that, again, I'm a broken record with this, but that is what your senior program coordinator is there for. And I like to call it a spidey sense. If you get a spidey sense that, ooh, is this too much that I'm doing? Is maybe paying for dinner every week too much? Talk to your senior program coordinator about it, and they can help you work it through, because there is no right or wrong answers to these things, and there's no real clear path for how to build relationships with these kids. It's going to be different for every kid in every case, and what's maybe appropriate on one case is not appropriate on the other. But to cover myself, I am going to remind everybody that general rule of thumb is you don't want to be spending money on your kids. We do have avenues to get some things, like a different example that's not going out to eat, but maybe you want to buy your kid a bike. And the more appropriate way to go about it is don't buy that bike for your kid yourself. There are programs such as One Simple Wish, where you can put in a request to that program and write a little write-up about your kid and why they deserve this and what they've gone through. Confidentiality being kept in mind, they only let you use the first letter of their first name when you're mentioning that kid. But then somebody can log on to One Simple Wish, pick to fulfill that kid's wish, and then they'll get you the money to buy the bike, like by sending a gift card, or actually get the bike or something like that. And we have lots of other opportunities and other programs that we work with. And again, your senior program coordinator can help you with those ideas. You don't have to remember what One Simple Wish is. You can go to Carol Lee and say, hey, I really want to get my kid a bike. How can you help me to make this happen? And they will come up with these ideas for you. And I want to ask Rachel and Chris a little bit more about what other services we can mention right now, or what other opportunities there are for gift giving and things like that. But I did want to tell a quick little story of how I used to be a transportation worker in Nebraska, and I got in a lot of trouble for buying a green smoothie every single day for my kiddo that I would transport, because her foster family couldn't afford to take her to Starbucks, and I could. And it sparked a conversation about why I had more money to do that for her, but her foster mom couldn't. And I wasn't, it's not that it was inappropriate that I bought her the green smoothie necessarily. It was that I did it on a case where I didn't have the relationship built up with the foster family well enough to know that they were comfortable with it. So there are definitely cases where I'll swing through and get my kid a smoothie or something, and it's totally fine. And it's a wonderful thing that I get to do that. And it's a great way to build a relationship. And then there's other situations where you haven't laid that foundation with the team and with the family, and it causes issues that you couldn't even possibly foresee ahead of time. So that's something that always I like to bring up as a weird reason why we have these rules and why they're there.
Well, Mara, I think, I don't know how many people know this, but a precious child always has birthday, or before COVID anyway, I'm sure they still are trying to keep it up, but they have birthday boxes that have cake mixes and decorations and probably some presents, if you let them know what age the child is. So you can always access a precious child. They're more than willing to help out with those kind of things.
And Mara,
And as
oh, sorry. Go ahead,
no,
Chris.
I was going to say, and as Mara said, that we have that One Simple Wish program, which is for specific items usually. So if you know ahead of time that you're going to need eyeglasses for your kid, or we also have a program where we can get refurbished computers at certain times during the year for our kids. And you know, that's always a good thing to give kids, especially now that they're doing at-home learning. So those are a few. I don't know, Rachel, do you have any more?
I was in on a training that Foster Source is also another good resource. They've got a lot of things that they can help with resources, some money resources, some ideas for kids' schools. So Foster Source is a good one as well.
And if you don't have access to any of these, just check with your senior program coordinator and they can get you hooked up, or your peer coordinator, they can get you hooked up with these resources. But yeah, Foster Source is a good one too, Rachel. We just kind of got hooked up with them in the last like 6 months or so, and they offer trainings, they offer things for foster parents. So if your foster parents are in need of anything for the kiddos, that's also a good resource for them too. So there's lots of resources out there, just need to know how to access them. And kind of one short story on this, I had a CASA who kept taking his kiddo to Dave & Buster's, and I'd look at his expenses and it was $80, $90, and I said, what are you doing? And he said, yeah, we're going to Dave & Buster's and he wants to play all these games. And I said, that's probably a better activity as kind of oh, you did great in school, or it's your birthday, those kind of things, rather than on a monthly kind of basis. So we always look for coupons too. So if you buy one, get one free kind of things, those are good, good to look at for your kiddos too. So it's just kind of thinking outside the box in some cases.
The other thing that I wanted to bring up that I've actually heard our program director, Vicki Record, I know it looks like Vicki's on the call, but that's actually Becca just using her account. But Vicki is our program director, and she's had some conversations with me in general. We've talked about this issue and why these rules are in place for CASA programs just across the board. Are a lot of these kids a lot of the kids that we serve, they don't get to build real relationships with adults or with people in general. What they do get a lot are gifts and free passes to summer camps and things like that because they're foster kids. And so they end up having a weird sense of, trigger word, but entitlement that we wouldn't otherwise assume that they had. And it doesn't really seem fair to call foster kids entitled, because how awful is that? We just want to give them so much because they're lacking so much. But sometimes gift giving or spending a lot of money on them sends the wrong message, and it doesn't build a relationship with them. They just see, I'm a foster kid, so my CASA's, that's their job. They're supposed to like give me stuff and do stuff for me, like whatever. And they actually respond really well to, instead of going out to eat, we're going to go to the library and talk about some books. Not always right away, but it helps to show how real relationships are created and made and maintained. And they might not in any other way in their life have seen that ever. Go ahead, Rachel.
I did actually have a CASA kid one time tell me that it was my job to provide him for food and for everything else. And I said, no, that's not my job. My job is to make sure that your needs are met in court and for everything else. So he already had that sense of entitlement, and I'm not sure where that came from, but that's what he thought my job was just to provide everything he was missing. So some of them already have that before they get the CASA.
So how are you guys feeling about gift giving and money during gifts? Is it seeming more scary, less scary, or what are your thoughts too? Because part of why it's so important to have you guys be a part of this is we need your sense of perspective and understanding and what's the right way to go about it. Because again, there's no right answer. It's just we're all just gauging it ourselves as to what's right for this kid and what's wrong for this kid. So what are you thinking? And maybe some examples from your own cases.
I can add here that I really tried to build a relationship with these kids before I spent any money on them. So we went to the library, and they didn't have library cards, so they got library cards, and we got to talk about what the library system could offer them. We would go to the park. In time, each of the children, the little girl, she loved crafts. So at Christmas time, I spent money on paper and glitter, and we went to the library, and they made Christmas cards for their loved ones. So I thought that was a well worth expense. We did go bowling one time, and I hadn't been bowling in probably 20 years. Oh my God, I about died when I saw the prices. But we were there, and they bowled better than I did, by the way. But we did do that, and of course they have video games, and I said, no, we're not doing that. We're just going to go bowling. We're going to have a conversation. I did buy them a snack while we were at the bowling alley, but it got expensive. So I thought, okay, lesson learned here. And most of the money that I have spent on them has been for things to do. One boy who's having a real hard time with the relationship with his mother, I bought him a journal, and I took a picture of the journal that I have kept over the years, and I said, you know what? You can talk about anything in your journal, and nobody cares, and nobody has to read it. And, you know, those are the types of things that I have spent money on. But mostly because I'm retired, and I'm not poor by any stretch, but I ain't rich either. So, yeah. So, but I think there's a balance, and I haven't had an issue, I don't think. One time they do get to expect things if you're doing it all the time. So it needs to be a treat. as opposed to, you know, whenever I see you, I'm going to bring you gifts. No, I'm the gift.
Yeah.
And I want them to know that, you know, it's like, I don't have to do this. I'm doing this because I want to, you know, and I like you, you know. So that's my take. I'm anxious to hear about anybody else's input.
That's awesome, Mary. Thank you. I
I
think
agree.
Laura and then Jamie wanted to share something too.
Yeah, I wanted to agree with Mary that I'd like to get to know my kiddo first. And also, I don't want that expectation that I come bearing gifts or that's what the relationship is about, because that's not what I want the relationship to be about. So I've been on the same case since October, and I didn't spend money on my kiddo until the summer. So I visited her all through the fall and the winter, and just kept that expectation that I would come empty-handed every time. And we would play games or play with toys or just talk. And so I finally got to a place where I was comfortable bringing something over. But that wasn't until more recently. When summer started, I brought a little pack of like 8 beginning reading books for her. She's really struggling with reading, and we read them together. And then she recently had a birthday, and I did bring her a small birthday gift. But other than that, I haven't spent any money on her. I also haven't transported her. So I haven't had that opportunity to spend money on a kiddo because I haven't taken them anywhere. So I don't have a lot of experience in this department, but I know that I've just kept it really low key. And I think the point that was made about the relationships that they have with the other adults around them, I think that's so huge. If you can see the relationship between maybe a parent that isn't directly in their lives every day, I have noticed that there can be a gift-giving relationship there that might not be super healthy. It might be a way to make up for time that's just not spent. And so I didn't want me to be one more adult in her life that just gives gifts instead of time spent. So that's important to me as a CASA.
Sounds like you're doing a great job of like laying the foundation and building that relationship and paying attention to the appropriate ways to do that and go about it. So that's awesome. Jamie, did you want to say something too?
Yeah. So I have found like with young kids, just crafts are the easy, fun thing to do. And so I did spend some money on like chalk, and that was like less than $3. I was like, we could make this together and it'd be maybe less expensive, but then it has to cure. And so I just bought it. And then also the dollar store caseworker told me like, you can go in and get activity books, and that way it's really easy to assess where your kid is educationally. You can help them with a page or just kind of see where they are. So that has been money well spent for me. And then I did want to mention that libraries generally have resources where you can like check out a backpack that has a state parks pass or butterfly pavilion, or just like other activity passes that you check out for a day or a week. And that's a really easy way to spend free time with your kid.
So helpful. Thank you. Go ahead, Rachel.
So I've done things like what you were saying, Jamie, about activity books, especially for some of those kids who may have IEPs. And they didn't want to do it. This one girl didn't want to do it. But I was afraid that her writing, she had some medical issues, and so her writing wasn't real good. So I wanted her to practice her ABCs and stuff like that. And so we made it into a game, and she really, really thrived on that. And her hands started working really, really well. So there are things like that that, you can do. I also did a garden with one of my kiddos last summer. He really enjoyed that. I brought the seeds. Well, his foster mom brought the original seeds, and then he wanted to plant more. So I bought some more materials for him to plant, and he just absolutely loved it. So really part of it too is getting to know your kids and what their likes and dislikes are. I had a kid one time, a teenager, that I brought him a can of frosting, a simple can of frosting, but he was like, this is all for me? Why me? Because he had never had anyone listen to him. I listened to him that his favorite things were the can of frosting. And then later on, I brought Skittles because I remembered all that. And that's really important for them to understand, is that somebody knows what they like and what they don't like, what their favorite colors are, just because they a lot of times have not had people listen to them.
I love your stories, Rachel, of some of the cute stuff that you do with your kids. You have great ideas, but it seems like everybody is doing such a good job in coming up with these unique and cool ways to give to their children and do fun things with them. I did want to mention real quickly that whenever you get emails from us as CASA about things like opportunities that they are to give gifts, or you might get an email about, hey, there's so many tickets available for the Denver Zoo that we have donated to us. Don't have to worry about, should I spend the money or should I not? Take that opportunity. That's just an easy way to do something nice for your kid and be the good guy, and you don't have to just stress about whether or not it's appropriate or not appropriate, because we're saying it is appropriate. Go for it. Do it. And one of the things that's happening right now is a Precious Child fills backpacks for back to school, and they provide us with enough backpacks to help our kids. So if you have a kid that you think could benefit from a backpack, whether they're going back to school or being homeschooled, there's some supplies that are in it, and you can get the backpack based on their grade, age, developmental stage. Reach out to your senior program coordinator, and they can tell you how you can pick that up, and they'll get that all figured out. Does everybody know that already and has heard about it? Okay. Good, I figured. Anything else that you guys wanted to bring up, Rachel, Chris, since we're on this topic, or anything you wanted to segue into?
I just want to say that the backpacks are really good for the kids. They really do enjoy them because it's a gift, and it's something that is theirs and will follow them even if they're placed somewhere else.
And if there are biological kids or other foster kids in the home, we can also provide backpacks for them. So it's not just that one kiddo being singled out for gifts. So make sure if you've got other kiddos in the house that you're able to help provide for them too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I always forget to mention that. Go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to ask, someone mentioned IEPs. I think I have that correct. Isn't that the term? Where they have a special program set up to work with a young person as far as catching up academically, typically. The brother and sister, these two kids that I have right now, I guess there's a question in my mind as to whether or not they need one of these special programs. But on the other hand, with everything that's been going on with kids working from home, supposedly, who makes that evaluation? Is that something that we go to the school and say, hey, would you evaluate this kid? Or how does that happen?
Rachel, do you want to answer it, or Chris, or do you guys want me to?
An IEP is an individual education plan, and that's usually asked for by the caseworker. When a kid is a lot of times it's when they're having trouble in school, and we can pinpoint something that it's a learning issue, or it's those kinds of things. And it's usually requested by the caseworker, and we do meet with the school to go over what kinds of things the kid needs help with.
So I really need to coordinate through the caseworker on it. That
Right.
question.
Oh, and if
Okay.
this year is very, very different for IEPs, ARC, which is Association for, I think they've changed the R word, but they're having a coffee on Monday morning to discuss IEPs. I think it starts at 10. But with kids not being in school, it's difficult to do revisions on IEPs. It's difficult to get the services for IEPs currently. So it's something that in normal times, it has to be requested in writing. Kid has to be in the school for a certain amount of time to be able to assess the child and what their needs are. So in normal times, it's a process. And they look actually, hopefully, to the parents, if they're still around, to request that. So it is a process, and you know, there's lots of information out there on it, but during this time of COVID, it's difficult. You can't get the services, you can't get reviews on them. So like I said, ARC is doing one, I think at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, a Zoom meeting to go over and discuss this, because ARC Advocates is an educational advocacy agency also. So if your child is having issues at school and not getting anywhere, that's a good resource to tag into, to talk to them about what are their rights, because they have rights.
Okay, well, thank you.
And Chris is so knowledgeable on this topic, but there's also some resources and trainings, I think, that are on our website where you can learn more about children and their educational rights, their legal rights regarding that. You definitely don't need to know all of that information, but we have books and we have resources, and there are ways to learn more about it. And I know there's more that I can even learn about that topic. So feel free to dig into it. Feel free to talk to your guardian ad litem on your case about that too. They'll know a lot. And like Rachel said, reach out to your caseworker, but you also have the ability to talk to the school and be an advocate in the school in your own right as a CASA to say, hey, I think my kid is struggling. Can we talk about an IEP or a behavioral plan or what's appropriate? And you don't need to be an expert on any of these topics in order to be an advocate in that way, and just mention it.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else? Any other questions while we're on that topic of education that you guys have or that you want to talk about right now? Okay. So we have less than 10 minutes, right? I think about 10 minutes. My computer clock is a little fast. We have about 10 minutes left. What would you guys like to talk about before I just pick another topic to move on to?
Have you had any input in the last week or so about actually going back into court live? Not that I'm pushing for that, but
yeah.
What's the status of that?
Well, I am not in the inner meetings of exactly what's going on, but what I have been told and what we know as a program team is that it looks like through August, it's going to be the same. It's going to be pretty much virtual attendance.
Okay.
Except for emergency hearings in general. And then if there is going to be an in-person hearing, the judge would have to ask the chief judge for the 17th Judicial District for permission to have that in-person hearing of some sort, which would likely be something for a contested trial. So it's going to be very rare and few between that anything in person happens. It's mostly going to be virtual from now, and I have no idea what it's going to look like for September. We're all kind of flying by the seat of our pants here, and we'll see. But through August, I think that's what you can expect.
Okay.
Anybody else with burning questions or things that we didn't talk about so far? Do you feel like we talked a lot about things that you wanted to hear during today's coffee and conversation, or that you expected to hear? Anything surprising so far, or that you didn't know?
I learned. Of course, I always learn. I'm a newbie. But I am curious to have just a little conversation about going back to school in a virtual setting. My first family did okay towards the end of the school year with doing stuff virtually. And of course, because I'm a retired teacher, I'm all about talking to teachers. So I'm right in the schools and talking to my kids' teachers. I have a new case. So I'm not sure where the new case is going to go, but I really am all about this education thing, and it's important for the kids to have interactions as well with people as well as the computer. So any input that you could share that would help me do a better job with my kids once school starts, I'd be appreciative.
That is such a great question, and so pertinent to everything that's going on right now. I don't really have a great response or a lot of knowledge about it. You all might know more than I do about what's going on with going back to school. I will say that you should talk to your senior program coordinator and just maintain that relationship, because as things happen, as we move into August and into September, we'll know more and more and figure it out. But I think Chris has some helpful tidbits, so I'll let her chime in.
Well, I was going to ask, I know what Boulder Valley's options are. Adams 12 was supposed to come out yesterday with their options. Has anybody heard what their options are going to be?
I have not.
It sounds like there's 3 options pretty much, you know, the districts are working on, and one is completely online, one is a hybrid, which it sounds like most schools are going to currently. I don't know, Rachel, have you heard anything about Adams 12, what they're doing?
No, I haven't. I know that they might possibly follow what 27J is doing, which right now they've talked about they're going to do a hybrid where they're in school a couple days a week and out of school a couple days a week. And when they're in school, they're only within a cohort group of 10. And they are not allowed to hang out with anybody outside of that group, including on the buses and stuff like that. So I don't know how that's going to work with the high schoolers, but that's what I've heard. And the last I heard that Adams 12 was going to try and follow suit with similar to 27J. But those are the only 2 that I know of that is happening right now. I guess, no, I'm sorry, I lied. I do have a grandkid in Adams 12, and they have given them the option to go part, online part of the time and in school part of the time, or online only. And 27J also has that option, online only. So far that's all I've heard with those 2 school districts. I don't know about the others.
That sounds to be like what Boulder Valley is doing also. But they pushed their start date back till closer to the end of August. And the teachers are some of the teachers are having issues with going back in the classroom. So I think it's how to advocate for education. We have to get them back into school first to see, or at least know where they're going to be at. And then, Mary, then we can kind of look forward, and that's maybe a good topic to have some discussion around, is what does education advocacy look like this fall? We've got kids completely online, you've got kids doing the hybrid model. So that's a good point, and that's something that we can bring bring up like in our staff meetings and maybe talk to some people in some of these districts once they've settled in, because I think they're changing to meet the needs of the community. So they may have set what they're going to do now, but who knows in 2 weeks what it's going to look like. So
from my understanding, because I do sub at Jefferson Academy, which is in Jefferson County Schools, even though it's like right next door to Broomfield and Westminster. But grades 1K through 5 will be starting in-person classes with very small classes, but the first 2 weeks is going to be 100% virtual. So with my new family, I'm going there tomorrow. I have to find out, you know, do they have the appropriate equipment for those children to attend classes virtually. And I am learning the new family, but then middle school and high school, it's really up to the parents if they want their child to be 100% virtual, they can be, but there'll be a hybrid between attending classes and like an A-B kind of situation where A classes are in class Monday, Wednesday, I'm just giving an example, and B classes Tuesday, Thursday. So it's really going to be dependent on the parents. And of course, I'm dealing with a foster family for the first time, and a grandmother for the first time. And the 5 kids are split up between 2 different school districts. And you know, as an educator, my heart goes out to these, not only the kids, but the parents and the teachers. This is just crazy times. I'm sounding like my grandmother. And so I don't mean to do that, because I can remember my grandmother saying back in the 70s, I'm so sorry for you kids. I'm glad I'm going to be dead and gone. And I'm like, okay, Gram, you know. Anyway.
No, this is so helpful, Mary. I think this is such a rich discussion and kind of like the perfect topic for coffee and conversation, and maybe something that we can talk to Becca about readdressing or having a topic later on down the line. And I know we're running out of time now, and we always want to be mindful of everybody's schedule. So yeah, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to